I went and saw episode 1, and people always ask me my reaction to episode 1. I went and saw it 3 times that first day on May 19th. The second time just to make sure I'd seen what I thought I had seen the first time that I saw it, and then the third time just to make certain, that there was a talking frog stepping in poodoo in my Star Wars movie that I've been waiting to see 15 years. That really disappointed me. I couldn't believe there were fart jokes in episode 1. And I still can't believe it. I really thought in the Blu-ray, finally, he would take out the some of the poodoo and fart jokes, but he didn't. But it was, I still enjoyed episode 1, and one of the first things I did when I got a bootleg of it, not that anybody had a bootleg of episode 1, but was cut together just the Darth Maul scene. I wanted to cut just opening credits, Darth Maul fight scene, end credits. That would have been my Phantom edit of, because I love that. It was still the coolest lightsaber battle. Anakin versus Obi-Wan is probably even cooler. But so what happened with so what happened after episode 1 came out, and then since so many fans were disappointed by episode 1, and at the time I felt that no one was ever going to make this movie now. I'm like, no one's going to make a movie about this. And a lot of fans said that when they heard about it, what a horrible thing to do to your dying friend, make them watch episode 1. And yeah, you're right, I wouldn't do that to my friend. So I imagined that it was never going to happen. And but Matt Peninciaro, the producer, he's like, I still, let me try and let's work on the script and let's see what happens. And years went by, and then another year went by, then episode 2 came out, and I liked episode 2 a little bit better. It still wasn't the Star Wars movie I'd been wanting to see, all those years. I didn't get that until episode 3. Episode 3 for me was the Star Wars movie I had wanted to see since I was 15 years old, and I think that people who hate on the prequels, if you don't like episode 3, then you're not a Star Wars fan, and you never were, because if you haven't wanted to see, Yoda versus the Emperor, or Anakin versus Obi-Wan, or all of the, or Mace Windu versus all of that, so much iconic Star Wars moments that I'd wanted to see my whole life were in that. I keep digressing and nerding out on Star Wars. I apologize. I'm going to get to the Q&A here eventually. So what happened? The first domino was Matt Peninciaro being interested in the script, and then we shopped it around, and the big missing element was Lucasfilm. How are you going to make this movie without the permission of Lucasfilm? And that seemed impossible to approach them and say, hey, can we make this movie about breaking into your offices? We think that would be awesome. And it just didn't seem like there was any way that could happen. And then the weirdest thing happened is after 5 years of trying to get this movie made, after around 2000, maybe 6 years, after 6 years after 1999, around 2005 was the script found its way to Kevin Spacey, which I didn't sleep for about 3 days while I knew that was going on. I can't believe Kaiser Soze is reading Fanboys. And he loved it and wanted to be a producer. He took it on under the banner of his Trigger Street Productions, and that changed everything. And the way that I heard, and then he was in the position of being able to just call up George Lucas. If you're Kevin Spacey, you can just call up George Lucas and ask for permission. But the way that I heard that it happened was that they were making Superman Returns in Australia, and Kevin Spacey was there in full Lex Luthor costume when George Lucas visited the set, because he was down there prepping episode 3, I think. And Kevin Spacey and George Lucas are on the set of Superman Returns, and they're talking, and he's like, I'm producing this little Star Wars fan movie about guys breaking into Skywalker Ranch, and I would love, for you to take a look at it. And George Lucas said, I've heard about this movie. George Lucas had heard about it just because of all the news on the internet, but I think never, took it seriously or just didn't know. But now that Kevin Spacey's a producer, he read the script, and then George Lucas said, sure, yeah, you guys can use Star Wars. And yeah, and I, my head exploded about 12 times that day. So after I finished picking up the pieces of my skull off the floor, then things went really fast. That was 2000, the tail end of 2005. And once George Lucas said yes, and once Kevin Spacey was a producer, then Harvey Weinstein, they took it out to several studios and looked at it. And then I got a phone call one day that Steven Spielberg was reading it. And once again, my head, not only has George Lucas read it and said yes, but now Steven Spielberg is reading it. So that was just like the most exciting, like, and frightening time of my life. But it ended up going to the, the Weinstein Company right after they had stopped Miramax and changed it to the Weinstein Company. And so Harvey Weinstein, who had produced Pulp Fiction and all of these movies, also became a producer. And then it went really like fast. Like by the end of 2005, it was just one crazy bit of news after another that Billy D. Williams is going to be in the movie, and Carrie Fisher is going to be in the movie, and William Shatner is going to be in the movie. And they're going to let us shoot at Skywalker Ranch, and I had to go lock myself in a room and just kind of weep quietly to myself. I couldn't believe any of this was happening. And then in February and March of 2006, we went to Albuquerque and shot the movie. And that was that's 7 years after I had written this script in Austin, just did this little Star Wars fan movie. And now I'm in Albuquerque, and there's, they're building all these sets, these things that I had just written, a few lines on the page. Now they're building them, and there's Bucephalus, there's the Fanboys van, and it looks amazing. And there's Billy D. Williams hanging out on this set. It was the craziest. Like felt like I was on the set of my own Star Wars movie. And the other big missing element, in addition to Kevin Spacey and George Lucas, was, I think after Kevin Spacey became a producer, was finding Kyle Newman. Like I couldn't, I learned very early on that I was just, at that point I wasn't ready to cut out to be a director and getting performances. Directing was a whole different thing that I had, imagined in my head. But Kyle was just like the perfect guy. Like Fanboys never would have gotten made without Kyle, because he had gone to NYU Film School, and he had a much more kind of polished cinematic idea for a way to tell this same story. He brought so much to it, and I didn't think at the time it was possible that I could find a bigger Star Wars fan than me, but Kyle, his love and knowledge of Star Wars dwarfs mine. Expanded universe, all of it. He just knows it all and loves all of it. And he and I would argue about Episode 1. He loved every frame of Episode 1. The way that he would put it is, it's like, well, there's some members of your family that you don't like, but they're still part of your family. You can't talk trash about someone in your family. I'm like, God, and Episode 1 might be part of your family, Kyle, but I'm going to disown it. But yeah, so he was instrumental in that. And then just being on the set, and and it was his first movie too, and so it was amazing. And being even a bigger Star Wars fan for me, I would see him like the night before. Just how excited he was, like, tomorrow I'm going to get to direct a scene with Carrie Fisher, I can't believe, So that was just an amazing, it was like the best experience for us, getting to make that movie. And the guys who played the Fanboys were all amazing and had grown up with Star Wars, and so it was like, there was all this love of, and everybody, like kind of indie filmmakers, this is our chance to make a Star Wars movie. I remember I brought all of my original Kenner action figures to the set, like my original land speeder and a bunch of my Star Wars lunchbox that I carried to grade school every day. And I took them to the prop guy, Joe, and I said, hey, I brought my Star Wars stuff from when I was a kid. Can you make sure this ends up in the movie? And he's like, oh, of course. He's like, I did the same thing. He's like, I just called my mom and had her ship all my old Star Wars stuff to the set so I could sneak it into the movie too. So like, a lot of the Star Wars stuff you see is like me and Joe sneaking our Star Wars toys. And like when they're trying to talk Linus into going on the trip, and like Hutch keeps humping his leg, you can clearly see my lunchbox in the background. Don't focus on Hutch humping Linus's leg. Check out my lunchbox there in the back, immortalized for all time. I'm still really excited about that. So making the whole movie, it was just like a dream right up until the end of filming. It was just amazing, and that was when the long nightmare began. Like if you can imagine, just like, I can't believe they made my Star Wars movie. I can't believe that original Star Wars actors were in it, and that we got to film at Skywalker Ranch, the first movie ever to get to film at Skywalker Ranch. And still the only movie ever to film there, and so that was just, it was an amazing experience. But then we went into post-production, and that was just, we assumed that the movie was going to be done and ready by 2007 for the 30th anniversary of Star Wars. How awesome would that have been? And how perfect to have the Star Wars fan movie come out on the 30th anniversary of Star Wars. But that didn't happen, and we were just kind of in gradual stages of shock when they're like, well, we want to do some reshoots, we want to change some things, and then just the news kept getting worse. And then finally, like, they hid it from us as long as they could, that they had this idea. They think, well, we think it's a really good movie, but we think it could be even better and more fun and not such a downer if Linus wasn't dying at all. Wouldn't that be awesome? And Kyle and I said, no, that would not be awesome. That's the whole reason that they're going on the trip. If you take away that, it's no longer a movie about these Star Wars fans doing something noble for their dying friend, you know, and like in this like celebration of their mutual love of Star Wars. Now it becomes about a bunch of jerks who just want to see the movie early and are cool with trespassing and breaking in, you know, for no reason. It turns and it was just like a clear example that they didn't understand the movie. It didn't understand what it was about, and didn't understand fandom, and don't know Star Trek from Star Wars. That was like the big, you know, the big problem that we had is, you know, if you don't know who IG-88 or Boba Fett are, then you don't get to work on our Star Wars movie. We don't care what you think because you don't know anything. So that was like, it was just this horrible, frustrating thing to have your movie that you poured, you know, so many years of your life and so much into, to have that taken away from you and handed over to people who don't understand it. And that was, you know, really hard for Kyle.